Hello and welcome to another modeling video. This is Alan from the MyKonoman YouTube with another model video. Today I'm going to be building, painting, unboxing and reviewing the KOTOBUKIYA 1-144 Hitekkai Ikaruga. This is a commission build for the salt mine hobby shop, especially for a client that brought this to my attention. I'm not familiar with the source material, mostly that it's based off a side-scrolling old Japanese video game. I am very attracted to the box art and the look. He initially wanted it white, though I'm going to attempt the appearance of the digital art as much as humanly possible. The box contains coloured instructions, coloured water slide decals, 11 runners, no polycaps, though multiple forms of snap fit connections and articulation, and a reasonable amount of colour separation, though it does retail for 4,800 yen at two very short releases from Japan and KOTOBUKIYA. I have attempted and worked on some KOTOBUKIYA kits and have a knowledge of how challenging and hit and miss some builds are. This model was brought to my attention a few years back with the intent of commissioning me via a modeler who did not feel up to it. Via research and looking up other modelers who have attempted it, it is definitely a challenge. The term hand grenade is thrown around a lot, especially in the gunpla community, especially referring to real grades or kits where the armor and parts would flake off the snapped surface of an inner frame or other components, mostly noticeable unicorns or anything that transforms. This definitely covers that description. The first image we see is of misformed pegs, so there was a few points of overly heavily parts being mounted on top of each other and breaking, not necessarily through the fault of the modeler, though the injection molding of the product. Another reservation I had was pre-researching this before cutting into plastic. I've noticed there was not a lot of built reviews or finished kits that can be found on Google, Twitter or reviews on YouTube, besides unboxings or a couple of factory print snap finishes and an occasional snap build or snap and straight paint. Talking to a couple of people who have attempted it, they've either completely given up on the model due to falling apart during construction and after painting, or not overall attempting it, period. I'm not saying that I'm anyone special for attempting it, documenting it, or even being able to finishing it to a certain standard, though I have to say that throughout this build I've possessed it for 2 years and it has definitely tested my patience and ability. I have mistakes along the way and there's a few components that broke off and had to be repaired, pinned or even superglued after painting. Let's talk about some of the good bits, and I built a lot of really bad kits and had a lot of fun with it. The instructions are fairly clear and lays out everything that you need to know in assembling the project. It does take a bit of time to study and get orientation and each side correct. The detail of the components and parts that go together completely focuses on this build being as intricate, detailed, beautiful and accurately representing the artwork and the model from this video game, rather than focusing being a fun model kit or an even possible model kit for the average casual modeler to enter and attempt. All of that was thrown out of the window just to have this absolute masterpiece of a detailed piece of art. It's the only way I can really describe it, and analysing the parts and assembling, pulling apart and re-dry fitting before committing to glue and putty, that part definitely was a treat to see how I'd paint components and how detail would pop when weathering or metallic flake or washes would go over all the rays and scribed details. That bit was an absolute thrill. Being multiple components to snap together and enough pivotable points for articulation and movement, there was very little in the way of two parts sandwiching together to make a seam line, so not a lot on the way of putty was required. Nubs were placed in appropriate areas as well as flash lines. In a way, as a commission, I made no money whatsoever in the time assembling, disassembling, reassembling, test fitting to make sure it goes together multiple times, and pulling out very special paints, pearls and exclusive products to bring out the shape and profile as much as possible. A bit of buffing, a bit of polishing. The water slide decals was a treat. I analysed every paint I had and shaded multiple coats and lines, especially on the brass, to have a gradient and shaded look, which was a lot of fun and quite a treat. And the rest of the white parts was done with a straight up discontinued pearl and shaded with some discontinued senpai and clear brown colours to get those box art tones. Initially the building stage would be a few steps done and rest for a few weeks to even a month, and eventually that was built. It was almost 6 months to a year until the painting stage came and went all around tactic of parts management, mostly separating parts in colours and locating them in Ziploc bags to paint them in batches, writing down hand notes what needs masking and what extra detail needs hand painting, and even going as far as figuring out how to mount parts if it's a skewer, a peg, or even taping or blue tacking parts down to a hard surface, painting one side then flipping. It was further fun in deciding how to pick out details such as panels and raised areas without my usual go-to of black washes or panel lines, dry brushing, and pulling out some more unusual colours such as yellows into panels to be far more subtle. And as much fun as I had with planning out, painting and detailing all these wonderful parts, the sheer weight of the two sides and the tiny frame in the centre with multiple parts being sandwiched of different colours was just far too brittle. I assembled everything with PVA glue as much as I could to my delight, though what always stressed me out and disappointed me was just bits not fitting because of too tight of a tolerance due to the paint building up in the pegs and need re-drilling or sanding, or just not taking the load whatsoever and needing other adhesives to stick it together. Took this very slow and one day at a time, though the frustration just took all the fun out of this build. An extra note, the water slide decals of these cloud-esque details is quite beautiful and sits nicely on the pearl and clear brown. And here we go, finally the finished model and complete within what I had in me. Two further heartbreaks. There was a couple of mistakes made, and to me they are visible as it spins around. To most it's just something really cool. You look at it long enough, you'll notice it. And the second biggest heartbreak was when handing it over to the client. The body language was just very meh and uninterested. I don't think he particularly liked it, though he didn't fuss enough that he wanted money back or was very unhappy with it. My experience, a client would immediately look close up and turn it around, studying the details, praising it, thanking me. He just generally looked around, collected it in a box, waited for a while and left. Not much what to say, but not what I'm normally used to. However, this kit almost broke me on multiple occasions. I'm glad that any remnants, reminders and the project itself with the box is gone from my workshop, and it's a triumph that's definitely overcome. I have grown as a modeler sitting with this and thinking with certain projects and tackling certain designs that are outside of my comfort level is definitely possible. This particular project I'm glad not to see again. However, if I was to attempt it a second time, or anyone's going to build this after watching it, I would highly recommend from the articulated points of the hull to the wing sections, remove the pegs, drill deep holes and just brass pin it. As many plastic pins you can replace to the brass pins in the nub and socket, go for it. You'll have a much better time treating this more like a pinnable resin kit than a plastic injection molded kit. On the plus side, looking at these finished pictures, it looks very cool. I like the general look of it, and pretty much content to just move on from this point onwards. Do I recommend building this kit? Definitely not for anyone who's a beginner or even teetering on intermediate. It is not designed to be tackled as a scale model. It's purely put together in its own appearance and to come as accurate as possible to the source material, and only for people who are very keen or massive fans of the subjects to either commission it out or attempt it themselves. I know of a few who have bought two or ruined one and then tackled a second one with a lot more success. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content, and we'll catch you guys later. Check out all the reference material and links in the description section below, and we'll see you later.